Hello Bournemouth fans, this is not a prepared video. It's not a video I was expecting to do. I actually wasn't at Brighton yesterday, but when the result came through and I'm catching up with the stats and I'm catching up with it live, I've got friends sending me information, couldn't make the game, gutted to not make it. But again, Bournemouth lose. Brighton 1, Bournemouth 0. That's now 8 games that Gary O'Neill hasn't achieved a win in all competitions. It's now 1 draw in 6 in the Premier League, 1 goal in 6 in the Premier League. And with all that money spent, that was the problem solved. Problem was solved by spending all of that money. You can spend all the money in the world. You still need someone who knows what they're doing and has the experience. And I've said enough on social media about Gary O'Neill. It's not personal, never has been personal. I want my club to do well. I want my club to be managed and driven by a head coach who has some sort of experience. Let's go back, shall we, to how we got to where we are today. How did Gary O'Neill get this job? How? 12 games as interim manager that had no pressure on it. I went on BBC South when he got appointed and said this job is very different. It looks the same as the one he had, but it's not the same. He was looking after the job. He was babysitting. He was biding time as we were interviewing potential experienced head coaches that were available to come to Bournemouth to kick us on, keep us up and take on this new project of ownership that we had under Bill Foley. 12 games. 12 games. Let's look at the 12 games. Let's go back to the 12 games, which were straight after Liverpool. It was Wolves in midweek. Scott Parker had left a couple of days before. I'm not being funny. We probably get a draw against Wolves simply because Scott Parker walks out. When Scott Parker walks out, all the players feel a sense of relief. They could take those shackles off their ankles. They would have thrived under anyone that was standing on the touchline against Wolves. Wolves, lowest goal scorers in the league at that point, bottom of the league. And it still took a Lloyd Kelly clearance to get us a point against Wolves. We then went and got a 3-2 against Nottingham Forest, 2-0 down at half-time. What does Gary O'Neill do? Throw the kitchen sink at it, like any manager or head coach probably does. And we come back to win 3-2. That wasn't a masterclass. That was just a freak of nature in football that sometimes happen. You can't rely that you're going to do that 4 or 5 times a season. 1-1 against Newcastle. We were lucky to go in at half-time. They probably should have scored 2 goals. But we were good that day. I will give it to Gary O'Neill. I thought we were good. It was a good goal by Philip Billing. And we were harshly done by VAR. So look, the Newcastle game, I'll probably give him the draw. It was a good one. I was there. Brentford, boring. We tried to claim a penalty in the 94th minute. Terrible game from both teams. A draw against Brentford. Leicester, we were poor for 60-65 minutes. 2 late goals. We turned it around against a Leicester side at the time that were considering sacking Brendan Rodgers and the fans were done. 2-2 against Fulham. We were good that day in spells. I was there at Craven Cottage. We took the lead twice. Guess what? Couldn't hold the lead. Dropped points. Southampton, a team that were struggling to buy a win. The fans wanted Hussenholter out. Ralph was on his last game. It was clear. I was sort of told that by experienced journalists that Ralph was hanging on by a thread. And Gary O'Neill makes weird changes an hour before kickoff with a formation and lineup that you're just confused by. It was so bonkers that he realised it after 30 minutes and started moving players around and we were changing formations. Southampton beat us. I don't think they even won many matches up to that point, and we were beat by Saints. We went to West Ham on a Monday night. Rubbish. We were absolutely terrible. And yes, there was a VAR decision to help West Ham get a goal, but we were rubbish. Absolutely rubbish. We were only good, actually, once the game was gone, or once we actually threw players on like Jordan Zamora and Jaden Anthony and started getting partnerships in. But again, it was another game that we were not very good. Now, Tottenham, at home, we went ahead 2-0, comfortable, looking good, and we decided to shut up shop. Tottenham reminded me of the game years ago under Eddie Howe when we were beating Arsenal and we just decided to drop 50 yards too deep and take attacking players off the pitch. And Tottenham, yes, they've got a good team. Yes, they brought players off the bench and they won 3-2. But our defending at 2-0 was terrible. And we had more defenders on the pitch than we did attackers. To back that up, we went to Leeds. And we're 3-1 up. Show something about yourself now. Change the tempo of the game. Don't let Leeds get on the front foot. Don't let them grab something that's going to change the momentum. Bring a Ben Pearson on. Break the play up. Slow it down. Don't care. Don't throw away a 2-goal lead again. But we did. Lost to Leeds 4-3. Then we beat Everton in the Carabao Cup. An Everton side that were terrible all season under Frank Lampard before he got sacked. Beat them in the Carabao Cup, and then we beat them 3-0 at home before we broke for the World Cup. They were so bad, it was unreal. What you can give to O'Neill and that team as we went into the World Cup break is we were taking our chances. We had a high conversion rate. Because of the pragmatic and the way that Gary O'Neill approaches football matches, and he very much thinks about the opposition and defending before attacking, it does mean that you have to have a high conversion rate because we don't have many chances. If you're converting them, it's all great. It's all fun. It's all absolutely dandy. But if you're not converting the chances, guess what? You go for a large spell of not scoring goals, which is where we are right now. We clapped and showed our appreciation for a job that Gary O'Neill done in those 12 games. It had no pressure with it, but he still had to put 11 players on the pitch and still had to get results. And he got 13 points. But it was a mixed bag. It wasn't great. It didn't tell me that he could be a top-level head coach in the Premier League. The guy's been out of football from a playing point of view for 3 years. He got a coaching role in Liverpool. He got a coaching role to support Jonathan Woodgate in the Championship. Then he was a coach under Scott Parker. Then he's thrown in at the deep end. No one clapping in the North Stand, East, West, Family, South. No one clapping, in my opinion, was clapping to keep Gary O'Neill. Gary O'Neill was crying after that Everton game because he knew that was it for him. And what Gary O'Neill had to do then was think about his next path. Was that drop down and be a coach again for a new head coach, manager, if that could be worked out in a line, whether that's Bielsa, Knutson, whoever we're talking about, whoever we're even speaking to? Or would it be now dropping down to the Championship and picking up a job there, which he could have comfortably done under that Everton game, after that Everton game, or even the Portsmouth job when Cowley got sacked? What a great way for him to start his career path now after that interim experience. That would have been the best thing for him to do. Now he doesn't get a job in League 2 for me because it's clear and obvious that you can't wing or blag the Premier League. I said it. It's not the same. Interim is not the same as permanent. You can't blag it. And I don't know what went through the board's mind when they thought that Gary O'Neill, with support from Tommy Elphick and Sean Cooper, could keep Bournemouth in the Premier League. We could have had Bielsa. You can't have Bielsa. Can't have Bielsa because Bielsa requires 6 months of learning Bielsa ball. That might be true. But do you think Marcelo Bielsa comes in at Bournemouth and drills the players into Bielsa ball straight away? He has 7 weeks during a World Cup to potentially integrate some of Bielsa ball and then play to Bournemouth's strengths to keep us up. Then next pre-season, he full ramps up Bielsa ball. I don't think he goes in full whack for Bielsa ball. Bielsa I would have been happy with. Knutson I would have been happy with. Someone who's had a similar journey to Eddie Howe but in Europe. Or Sean Dyche. Sean Dyche was not the guy for me initially when we had 12, 15 weeks to find a head coach. But once we got to this stage, after Crystal Palace, after we lost at Chelsea, didn't even compete. Once we didn't compete against Crystal Palace, once we kept losing, once we didn't score, when we weren't able to score. We should have changed it before Brentford. Sean Dyche was unattached. I know this is not quite realistic, but you can't tell me that you can't arrange a lunch meeting with Sean Dyche and get something thrashed out so he comes in and hits the ground running. because Bielsa would have needed a little bit of time. Knutson might have needed a little bit of time. Sean Dyche knows the Premier League. He knows the country. He directly or indirectly knows the English game and a lot of footballers. He would have known most of our squad directly or indirectly. If anyone could have hit the ground running, picked up points and got performances, us organised and actually a threat in the final third, Sean Dyche would have done it. Not my initial choice, but after Crystal Palace or before the Brentford and Forest game, I would have got Sean Dyche in. We didn't get Sean Dyche in. Maybe it was too much to ask to maybe get a manager and find some players in the January transfer market. Maybe we can't do two things at once. But Everton did. Frank Lampard was favoured by the fans, but it got to a point where they couldn't take any more. The board acted for Everton. I mean, I'm not claiming Everton are a good model. They're clearly not. But they acted. They saw a manager in Sean Dyche or a head coach or someone that probably gave them the best chance they have with 18, 19 games to go. Sean Dyche comes in. He lays down the groundwork. He's had over 250 games in the Premier League of experience. And he goes and beats Mikel Arteta's Arsenal, who are top of the league and only lost once this season. And by the way, they were bloody good against Arsenal. And there's the proof in the pudding there that Sean Dyche is someone who's got experience and can work, make something work. And he's given Everton a chance. Everton always had a chance once they got Sean Dyche through the door. Lopetegui at Wolves has got over 300 games managing for Porto, Real Madrid, Sevilla, Spain. Wolves look a better side. They've beaten Liverpool 3-0 this weekend. Leicester under Brendan Rodgers. They've come through their rocky spell and they're starting to pick up points. They've just beaten Aston Villa away from home as well, I think. Absolute bonkers. We should have pulled it 4 weeks ago. We should have reacted. And if we thought throwing £60 million worth of players, by the way, some of them look really decent. Dango, Traore, fantastic. And that's all fantastic. But when you take these players off with 30 minutes to go, when you're looking okay going forward for the first time in 3 or 4 weeks, when you start to drop deep because you panic about losing, because Gary O'Neill has nervousness around losing. His approach is, we don't lose. We need an approach of, we need to try and win. We need to outscore most football teams to win a football match in this league. We've known that from game one. We are not going to keep many clean sheets in this league. And when this is released, I don't even know if Gary O'Neill's still AFC Bournemouth's head coach. But it's too late. It's gone. Who do you go and get now? Who do you go and get now? With 17 games to go, Newcastle next, Arsenal come in, Wolves away, Manchester City. I mean, who wants this job now? Bielsa wanted this job before the World Cup. Sean Dyche might have wanted this job before the World Cup. Who wants this job now? And sadly, as frustrating as it is, we probably know where this is heading. Probably down with the Saints. I mean, they don't look like they're having much fun either with Nathan Jones. I mean, I'm being offered Nathan Jones as a trade for Gary O'Neill in my tweets. And although it's a rubbish trade, still, at least Nathan Jones has some sort of stripes and he can actually call himself a head coach. Gary O'Neill is not a head coach. He's not a manager. He's a coach. He hasn't done anything yet. And you can't blag the Premier League. You can't wing it. And unfortunately, for all the good work we've done in the January transfer window in the last 10 days, it's all been undone again. For every good thing the board do, they make bizarre decisions and weird choices. And I predicted the minute Gary O'Neill got this gig, it's not personal, nothing to do with that. We love all these guys. We like Tommy Elphick. We like Sean Cooper. It's got nothing to do with that. It's to do with football. Gary O'Neill has never been in this position before. He has no experiences. He has nothing to lean on. He doesn't know how to get himself out of a run like this because he's never been there. Never been there. And this is the hardest league in the world. And it's ruthless. I'm sorry if this video's come across a little bit harsh and a little bit hard. I have sort of been bottling it up for weeks and weeks and weeks. Tell me what you're thinking. Get those thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button just for the time I've taken to do this. Very off the cuff. Felt like I wanted to get it out. I've done it now. Tell me what you're thinking and we'll see what happens in the next week or so. Eddie comes home with his Newcastle team next weekend. And we got to try and score a goal or two and try and win a football match. And who knows who's going to be the head coach or the interim coach on the sidelines. Could be Tommy, could be Sean. Heck, could even be Andrew Sermon. Thanks for watching. Sorry if you don't like what you hear. But that's how I say it on this channel. We'll see you on the next video. Up, cherries.